Had a number of questions recently about Acura's super handling all-wheel drive system and how it differs from the rest of the competition. Last week I had a video out talking about weight balance, and in that weight balance video I said that basically front-wheel drive oriented systems have an engine right here, and then we have the front wheels right here, and the engine is basically right on top of the front wheels. This is very different from a rear-wheel drive layout where we have the front wheels here, and then the engine block is sort of this way in the car. We have the transmission behind that, and that causes the weight balance to be shifted aft of the front wheels, whereas this setup tends to have the weight sort of shifted towards the front wheels. This is how rear-wheel drive cars have a 50-50 weight balance, and many front-wheel drive cars tend to have more of a 40-60 weight balance. So that's 40 in the rear and 60 up front. Now, as I said in that video, the layout of the engine really has nothing to do with where the power is going in the vehicle, however, and that's where Acura's super handling all-wheel drive system really makes a difference. So if we're taking a look at the car conceptually, we have the front wheels here and we have the rear wheels back here. In Acura's super handling all-wheel drive system, we still have a transverse engine, so that means we still have an engine right up here. We have a V6, for instance, in most of the super handling all-wheel drive vehicles. And then we have the transaxle right here. And the transaxle is a combination front axle and transmission. That's why it's called a transaxle in a transverse car, and it's called a transmission in a rear-wheel drive car. Now we have our front wheels connected to the transaxle. The reason that front-wheel drive cars like this exist is that all things being equal, a front-wheel drive car is going to be a little bit more efficient than a rear-wheel drive car. Now, in our world, of course, not everything is equal, and that's really important to know because there are some very efficient rear-wheel drive cars, but assuming that the loss in the transmission and the transaxle and everything else was all identical, you would get a slightly better fuel economy rating in a front-wheel drive car because we don't have angle gears in this particular setup. And you do find one angle gear in a rear-wheel drive vehicle, and that's back there in the rear differential. That does cause a little bit more loss than this kind of setup. Because inside this transmission, we basically have regular old straight cut or helical cut gears, but they're basically round gears and they're meshing right like that. In a rear-wheel drive vehicle, we have to turn the power 90 degrees. So we have an angle gear like this, meshing with an angle gear like that, so that way the power can go in there and then go out there. And this does cause a little bit more of a loss than this kind of gear arrangement. The reason I talk about angle gears is because they're very important to discuss when you're thinking about an all-wheel drive system, because when you add all-wheel drive to a car,